A big welcome tonight to Dean Sammut to the non-league radio show. Hello, Dean.
Hello, how are you?
Before we get into Chipstead FC, I want to find out a little bit about yourself and your background in football and how you got involved with the game.
So started out playing, as I'm sure many coaches and managers did. Was a Crystal Palace youth team player. Got released at 16. Did my scholar YTS at Barnet when they were in League Two. And then played for Sutton United. Went on to have a fairly good non-league career with Sutton United and played for Leatherhead and a few other teams at that level. So that's how I initially got into the game.
You touched on something there. I hadn't wrote this in the questions, but you've mentioned about being let go by Crystal Palace. What's that like as a young kid to be sort of released by a club after I don't know how long you spent there, like as a child, but what does it feel like to be released?
It's horrific. I mean, I was there for 3 years. I'm a massive Crystal Palace fan as well. We originate from South London, right around the ground. So Palace was my boyhood club, season ticket holder. All my family, my uncle, my dad, my granddad were all season ticket holders. So, I absolutely loved the club. So getting signed by them was a dream come true. But then when it comes to being released by them, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And if I'm being honest, it felt like my sort of world had collapsed at that point.
So then, do you start looking? I know, 16-year-old. It's just, I can't even remember 16. I'm trying to think. So, what do you start? Does your parents looking for clubs? Are you getting approached by? I think you said Barnet. So, how does it work?
Yeah, a bit of both. And obviously, being released at that age is difficult because it's in your GCSE school year as well. So it's an important time in terms of education. But I had Leicester City come in for me. They were in League One at the time. So I went and had a trial at Leicester. Was unlucky not to get offered anything there. And at this point, you're sort of thinking, oh dear, I'm not sure if I want to carry on because it's sort of rejection after rejection. So I went on trial at Swindon, didn't get in there. And then Barnet approached me and said, come for a trial. And for some reason, I played really well at that trial. And I got offered a 2-year YTS at Barnet. So that's how it worked on that one.
So as your footballing progressed, at what stage, and you created, I mean, you probably were involved in coaching as well, but when did you decide to go from the football to the coaching?
So when I was at Barnet, they, as part of the YTS, I did my level 1, FA level 1. That sort of gave me a taste of coaching, which I quite enjoyed. And, it's quite a good thing that they do that for the youngsters. It's something, you can fall back on if playing doesn't work out like it did for me. And then I was playing non-league for Sutton United at Step 2 when they were in the Blue Square South at the time. And I was doing jobs that I absolutely hated. I was working in the city, electrical wholesaling, sitting at a desk. I couldn't stand it. And it was my mum. My mum said to me, look, you look so unhappy going to work every day. She said, here's 500 quid, go and do your level 2. So I did. I took 500 quid off my mum, went and did my level 2. and then started working for the school that I work at now full time. So I work at a school called Trinity School. And I started coaching here, doing all different age groups. And then I sort of developed the passion from it from there, really, and haven't looked back since from there.
So from coaching to management, obviously at Chipstead FC now, what was the journey from the coaching side from management? I'm guessing there's been a few management jobs before Chipstead.
No, Chipstead's actually my first.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, we were... when I say we, my team, we were in temporary charge of Burgess Hill Town last season. We had 7 games to try and keep them in the Isthmian League, which we managed to do, but didn't actually get the job afterwards. So I for whatever reason, they decided not to give us the job. So Chipstead then come in for me, and so it's actually my first job as a first team manager. But it came from again coaching the youth teams at Chipstead. I was down there for a few years coaching. Again, right through the age groups from little Saturday soccer school up to the under 16s. And then the first team manager at the time, Rob Kember, who is Steve Kember's son, was the manager of the first team. And he said he watched a session of mine, which he enjoyed. And he said, would you get involved with the first team? So I became part of the first team set up under Rob Kember. And then after he stepped down after 6 years in charge, the club offered me the job.
I'm pleased you said Isthmian, because I struggle like hell to say Isthmian. Every time I've got to do an interview with someone or a manager or play in the Isthmian League, South Central Division, I have trouble saying it. Before we get on to the Chipstead, I'll just quickly, because I'm on Wikipedia, so I'll not put you on the spot, I'll quickly go down. Formed 1906, nicknamed the Chips. Played High Road, 2,000 capacity, 150 seated, whether that's still the same, I'm not sure. And you currently sit 11th of 20th, 20, sorry, if that's still correct. Green and white hoops. That's correct. Green and white hoops for the home strip and red for the away strip.
Yeah, that's all correct.
So I just want you to tell a little bit background about the club if you can, and, sort of how you got involved with Chipstead. Obviously, you took over from there, and a bit about your team you're working with.
So funny enough, Chipstead was my first ever Sunday team as an 8-year-old. So I've been connected to the club for many, many years. And it's a ground what hosts all the sort of Tandridge, the local Sunday League teams cup finals. So whenever we, reached the cup final as a kid, the final was always at Chipstead's ground. So it's a community club based in a sleepy village in Surrey. You could drive past it 6 or 7 times and not realise there's a football ground because it's in the middle of like farmland. But yeah, that's Chipstead really. It's a nice little sleepy village club. But it is on the borders of Croydon, which is obviously a hotbed of footballing talent, really, with the amount of professional and semi-professional players that come out of that region. So we're just trying to tap into that, really.
And you mentioned your team. You went to Burgess Hill for a bit. How many of that team have you got with you? And if you want to give them a shout out type of thing and tell us what their roles are.
Yeah. So I was actually assistant manager at Burgess Hill, and the manager was my best friend Lewis Taylor, who's had a very distinguished non-league career. So when we didn't get the job at Burgess Hill and I got offered the job at Chipstead, Lewis agreed to come in and be my assistant manager. So Lewis, as I say, he's had a distinguished career. He was at Fulham as a lad, made it professional for AFC Wimbledon. I think he won step 3 and 2 with them. He's played for Dorking, Bromley, Margate, Horsham. He's played for many, many clubs. So he's got some valid experience at that level, and he still actually plays for us as well at Chipstead. He player manages as well. And then the other assistant manager is a good friend of mine called Matthew Miles, who again has had a very sort of good non-league career for Carshalton Athletic, South Park, and he actually captained Chipstead's first team for 2 seasons himself before retiring. So they're my two members of staff at the moment with me.
You don't play still? Do you not play?
No, I mean I try and train in, and for 20 minutes I feel like I could make a comeback. But then after that 20 minutes, when my hamstring goes, I realise my boots are better hung up.
Well, I'm just looking on the website. I'll give the chipsteadfc.com, the different teams we've got. Obviously, the first team, under 18s, and there's a hell of a lot of mini and junior teams there as well. Must be great, especially when we get onto the coaching side later on with Technica. You must have a lot of pull of players going through the age groups. I mean, we're stopping it it's like under 11s to under 16s, I can see. And then the under 18s. So I'm just trying to get a gauge of the standard of your team without putting people on the spot here, where you are in the league. And what sort of pull you've got on the local area for players as well.
Yeah, I mean, so historically, I think Chipstead have always had to rely on the youth system. I think we've currently had, I think there's 7 or 8 boys now who are playing for the first team who have graduated through the youth team, which we're really proud of, because the club is not the biggest club in the league compared to, you know, your Leatherheads and your Churchies and teams like that. So we do have to rely on our youth because we don't have a huge budget. It's not a terrible budget at the same time, but it's nowhere near the budget that the teams have in it towards the top end of the league. But we've had some great success stories. We've had 2 boys who've played for the first team this year who have been at the club since Saturday Soccer School, which is for 4 and 5-year-olds, and they've gone through every single youth team at Chipstead, into the under-18s with me at Technica, and then being promoted to the first team as well. So we're proud of that, you know.
No, good stuff. And how often are you training a week? Is it twice, or depending? I'm guessing if you've got midweek matches as well. Do you get many training sessions in during the week?
Yep. So we train twice a week. We train Tuesdays and Thursdays, like pretty much most of the teams do. Providing obviously we don't have a game on a Tuesday. So yeah, on a Tuesday night we're up at the club, actually training on the training ground at the back, and on a Thursday we use the secondary school that I work at on the AstroTurf there.
I was going to say the weather at the minute's not very good, so I was just going to mention where you're training on all weather. I'm guessing most of the time.
Yeah, I mean Tuesday up at the club can be challenging because it's only grass up there. We don't have any sort of 3G facility up there. So that is when weather dependent. Luckily, I'm a facilities manager at a school in Croydon, which has quite good facilities. So I've managed to access the AstroTurf there on mates rates, should we say.
No, good stuff. I want to chat a little bit about the facilities you've got at the club. I mean, it looks quite, you know, from the non-league grounds. I can see pictures on the website. Just give us a little bit of like background for people on the facilities that you're working with at the club.
I mean it's a typical non-league ground in terms of, you know, you've got your clubhouse and your changing rooms, full size grass 11-a-side pitch, and then we own the training ground. I think it was purchased in the late 90s, I believe, around the back of the stadium, which boasts another 11-a-side grass pitch, a 9-a-side and a 5-a-side, and a little training area as well. So it's the facilities are improving. The club's always trying to help improve them, but Chipstead is up on a hill and it's got a different weather system up there, I'm sure. And it's probably one of the coldest non-league grounds you'll play at, and it could be sunny everywhere else, but it'd be raining up at Chipstead, that's for sure.
Do you get a lot of local fans, supporters in?
To be honest, it's improving each season. You know, on each season, the crowds are getting bigger. The club are really trying to, you know, promote the youth teams coming to watch. So we have mascots at every game that play for the club. The under-10s recently did our last one, so that obviously comes with a lot of parents and grandparents wanting to come and watch. I think this season a lot of my family are there. I've got a big Maltese family, so aunties, uncles, cousins, mum, dad, they're all there watching. So you know, we've been hitting consistently attendances of sort of 100 to 150, sometimes over that, close to 200, which if you looked at Chipstead maybe 5-6 years ago, maybe a bit longer, you were lucky to get sort of 50 to 80 turning up. So it is slowly, the reputation of the club is getting bigger.
And without putting you on the spot too much on the league position, what are you sort of hoping to achieve? I know I can see from the fixtures you're off the back of 3 home games. I don't know if they were all played due to weather, but what's your sort of hopes for the season?
So if you asked me that question at the beginning of the season and what the board of directors told me, you know, Chipstead are a club to sort of be happy to sort of finish mid-table. Again, historically, if you go back just before Rob Kember took over, the club were always sort of relegation threatened. Rob Kember came in and did a fantastic job of making the club, I think, finish its highest in that league, which was 10th or 9th, I believe. And Rob really sort of punched above his weight. So for me, if we can keep that steady path, I mean, we got excited at the beginning of the season. We won our first 3. I won Manager of the Month, and we were top of we were top of the league, and it's a bit of a curse winning that award, I think, sometimes. So inevitably we lost a couple, but if I remember right, we're sort of 7 points off the playoffs, but 11 points clear of the relegation zone. So who knows, if we can get a little run together? You know, I'm always ambitious. So if we can try and make a run towards the playoffs, that'd be fantastic. Or a top half of the table finish, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's a funny time of the season because I was just looking at our local teams up here, like Blythe Spartans and Morpeth and people, and there's not many points separating like the top 3 or 4 to like the bottom 3 or 4. If you put a run together, and you're right up there.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Well, people can check out Chipstead FC on chipsteadfc.com. All the links is on there, all the news, photos, media stuff. But you touched on earlier, and I want to move on to the Technica Pro. So if you could tell us a bit of background of that, and then we'll talk a bit more about it.
Yeah, so I set Technica Pro up because, like I said earlier on, when I got released by Palace and then went to Barnet, the education that was provided by Barnet at the time wasn't the best. So, you know, I left that my scholarship with a level 1 coaching badge, and I think it was a qualification in sports and fitness, which is not widely sort of known. So I wanted to set something up whereby boys that are good footballers can still receive a good education and have a proper education to fall back on. I don't want boys to sort of go through what I went through, where I was lost for many years, sort of bouncing from job to job that I didn't like, or in fact I hated, because I didn't necessarily have the education to fall back on. So I was approached by a school called Riddlesdown Collegiate in Croydon, which is the largest state school in Croydon, with a good reputation. It had outstanding in its Ofsted, and they wanted to run a sixth form football and education programme, which I jumped at the chance because, as I said, they're an outstanding school, and the boys can do a mixture of BTEC and A levels. So we've had some real intelligent boys, and they train as close to what a professional scholar would train. So they'll train 3 or 4 times in the week. They'll play for Chipstead under-18s on a Monday night in the Isthmian Youth League, and complete either their BTEC or A-level studies. And one thing that we do and my staff do, we're so strict on them. If they're messing around at school, if they're not up to date with their coursework, then they don't play. It's as simple as that. They get banned. So yeah, like I said, so that they get a good education to fall back on.
So you're fitting this in as well as the Chipstead job in between. So I'm guessing your week's quite busy with football.
Yeah, I think that's why my wife and I get on so well, because we don't see each other. It's really, really busy. Do the under-18s on a Monday night, Chipstead first team training Tuesday, Thursday. We have a game Wednesday morning for Technica. Friday morning the boys are training, and then obviously wherever I am in the country with Chipstead on the Saturday as well. So yeah, very busy.
But it gives you, I suppose you've got first choice of all the youngsters coming through as well, though, for Chipstead. If it gives them a chance to progress to the first team, if you're at the helm of that and you're doing the Technica stuff at the same time.
Yeah, exactly that. So, where I actually do physically take the under 18 games as well on a Monday night. I can see exactly who's performing and see who's good enough to make the step up. And as I say, I think maybe 8 or 9 boys now since Technica has started have made the step up through Technica, through Chipstead under 18s into the first team, which is fantastic. And there's a US scholarship pathway through the academy as well. So we've got 4 boys out in America at the moment, in places like Florida and all over the States, really, New Jersey, and living a fantastic life by the sounds of it, playing football and getting an education out there as well. Oh,
good stuff. I like what you mentioned earlier, touched on about, if they're not pulling their weight at school or they're misbehaving or whatever, they don't play. That's a good way to discipline them, I suppose.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable carrot dangling in front at the end of their nose, with boys. What we all know what boys can be like, and some of these boys are actually naturally quite bright, but they're lazy. And if you remove that carrot of football, It's amazing how quickly they're back at school and they're up to date with their coursework, and they're pulling their weight again in the classroom when football gets taken away from them.
Well, everyone want to check out Technica Pro. It's www.technicapro.co.uk. There's links, there's lots of photos of the training sessions and stuff on there. I don't know if there's anybody else you want to give a shout out while I've got you on, Dean. Anybody else I've missed, or any questions or something I should have touched on I haven't touched on, feel free to go for it.
No, I think we've covered it all. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's everything all done.
That's excellent. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
No, thank you for having us. Or for having me, I should say. It's been good. Thank you.
No problem.